You see before you The Northman, a film by Robert Eggers. I am new to Robert Eggers as far as I'm aware. It stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Claes Bang, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke, York, and Willem Dafoe. The Northman is a tale that you know well. It really is. You've seen this tale told many times, in many different ways, in many different shapes, across many different cultures. For at its heart, The Northman carries a core story that endures, that has endured for centuries, possibly even thousands of years. It is the story of the exiled prince returning to claim the life of the brother who had slain his father. The story in itself is romantic. It is an idea at its core concept that makes up the Hamlet story. And so it mirrors the Northman, for the tragic hero is named Amleth. If you take the H at the end of Amleth's name and put it in front, you would get Hamlet. It's not rocket science. This story is Hamlet at its heart, without the Roman bleed-in. For at the heart of the Northman, it is very much a Northman's tale. It stars Germanic peoples, Norse peoples, it stars people of the north, of the northern bloodlines, of those types of lands, races, and cultures. It stars that type of people. Naturally, it is a very cultural type of film. It is not a film made entirely to entertain the widest masses, because naturally this film did not make a lot of money. Although, I would argue that it should have. It should have made as much as The Lion King. For The Lion King, at the heart of that story, is a family-friendly retelling of Hamlet. Now, if you were to put The Northman, The Lion King, and Hamlet together in a room and say which one was the most widely accepted, which was the most easily accepted, the easy answer is The Lion King. For they take away all of the super complicated concepts, all of the really dark subject matter, though there is plenty of dark subject matter left inside The Lion King. It is left at its heart a family-friendly tale, and we enjoy it. But why do we enjoy it? Is it because at its heart it is a family-friendly tale of Hamlet, told through the characters who are anthropomorphic animals? I don't think it's quite entirely that, but maybe it's this core subject matter, this core romantic story of the exiled prince returning to claim his birthright, for he is driven by fate to avenge his father, who was unjustly murdered by his uncle. We know this story. In fact, by watching this film, you could probably predict who the bad guy is. Immediately, you could probably predict how the king is going to die. You could probably predict that the son is going to live. You're probably going to be able to predict that the son is going to return and somehow, in some way, shape, or form, is going to avenge his father and kill the uncle who unjustly killed his father. You could predict this story. But why does it make... What is it about this film that makes it my favorite movie of the year? I know this story inside and out. I could predict the story inside and out, and yet there was something about it Something about the acting, the Shakespearean level of dialogue that it, there's something about it that feels very enduring in a way that I can enjoy just as much as I enjoyed The Lion King. Now, Hamlet might not be a tale fondly remembered by too many people. In fact, for most people that I might assume, they probably heard about it in school, maybe in an English class, or a reading class, or an honors English class. They were forced to read it because it was part of the school curriculum, and as a result, they probably viewed it with a level of disdain because it was forced upon them rather than something that they willingly looked at. There's a certain psychological draw or aversion to required reading that I find in my studies, at least according to me and how I was viewing required reading throughout school, and a lot of the people that I talked to, they viewed required reading with disdain. They didn't care for it because it was required. They were graded on how well they could comprehend the material that they read, that they were graded on various sorts of questions in regards to the plot, dates, time, characters. They were sometimes required to write book reports about it, and to my knowledge, that often elicits a certain level of ire, of disdain, of gurness that they don't really like the subject matter as a result. Now, that is to say, sometimes you will find that some of the required readings that you read about in school might actually speak to you, and you might actually really like it. For me, Shakespeare was not that. It was not. I would often be averted to Shakespeare and his method of writing, the dialogue, the prose, the poems. I was averted to it. I was averted to all of the required reading, pretty much. I didn't care for Call of the Wind, Call of the Wild. I didn't care for it. Which other one? The meatpacking industry book. I can't remember what it was, but it involved a foreign family. I think it was Polish, I'm not too sure, but back in the day they come to America, they're all poor, and one of them goes into the meatpacking industry, and it's just a very sad tale. I don't know why we were required to read it, but it just made me hate our race. It made me hate it. They're good stories. All of the required readings are very excellent and should be taught in many ways. Hamlet is no stranger to being taught in the classroom. It is no stranger to being retold by other cultures. For indeed, Hamlet is taken by Shakespeare from another culture's story. It is a core concept, a story that was told verbally, over and over, from family to family, from hall to hall, from culture to culture. It is a story that endures throughout the ages, because at its heart, it is a timeless one. It doesn't need to be modernized, it doesn't need to be shifted too much in order to be understood. It doesn't need to be changed too much in order to be enjoyed. It's basically a story that gets reskinned all the time. And that new skin we enjoy. But it is because of that core concept, that core tale, that we find ourselves able to understand the subject matter and really come to appreciate it. But that's not the only reason why this film was so easily understood, yet so easily enjoyed. I also have to give credit to Robert Eggers. He's an excellent director. Holy crap, the long takes in this film. The actors are all excellent. Everybody in this film does their role to a T. Even the background characters. Everybody was moving in tandem throughout all of the long takes. You were drawn not just to the main character, but to the side characters. Everybody was doing something that was demanding your attention, yet the focus of the camera was making it so that you were always focusing on the main character, the parallel, the camera, the lens, everything about these takes, these scenes demanded your attention. Pausing was a pain to do because it demanded your attention. You only paused it for maybe a bathroom break or something. This is a film that demands that you watch it. It demands it. It commands you to enjoy it. And I did. The manner in which Eggers showed this story, the manner in which this Hamlet-esque story was told to us, ends up being very, very welcome. I don't know what else I could say other than to say, if you are a fan of The Lion King, if you are a fan of Hamlet, if you've read a story like Hamlet, it doesn't matter however many times you've read it, it doesn't matter however many different cultures have adapted it, if you are a fan of that story, I can almost guarantee that you will be a fan of this one. It is a tragedy at its heart, for indeed levels of storytelling, stage plays back in the day of Shakespeare and back in the day of Greek plays, you had primarily two different types of stories being told: the tragedy and the comedy. The comedy would often end in a happy ending. They would have a happy ending. They would have a lot of scenes that were funny. They might have some serious scenes, but at the end of the day, it was a very light-hearted story. The tragedy often dealt with very serious subject matters, very dark subject matters, and very difficult subject matters. And sometimes the main character, more than likely a lot of the time, the main character often met a bad end. But there was something about that story that needed to be told. There was something about that story that endured throughout the centuries, and that it was something about that story that Shakespeare would see throughout his scholarly studies, throughout stories of the ages, and he wrote his own versions of them. He adapted tragedies. He adapted comedies. Sometimes he combined the two. And that's just what great authors, what great writers, what great purveyors of story do. They often adapt the old and retell it through a new lens, through a new vein, from a new perspective. And that's what The Northman is. And I would say that it demands your attention.